Welcome to the Struggle Bubble. I'm your co-host, Chad Cutting.
And I am Craig Sergi. On today's episode, we are tackling the crucial topic of accountability. From sidelines of youth sports to the chaos of summer break and everything in between. Taking ownership of our actions and choices is essential for growth and success. Wow. Chad, where do we begin?
We got a lot to cover on the accountability side because we see it day to day with our kids, with our spouses, with our teams, with our leagues. And you and I have discussed offline quite a bit of what it means to be able to depend on somebody, but also set your own goals in life. So why don't we set up just a little bit about how we view accountability and what accountability means, and then get into some specific examples of where we've seen it professionally, personally, and then amongst the kids. So I'm going to go ahead and start off just with a little bit of an example. A long time ago, maybe almost 10 years ago at this point, I was visiting a friend who got injured in a car accident. And we were up visiting maybe 4 or 5 hours up in San Francisco. Had a great time, got to connect, walked out of the hospital, and the car is gone. I look up at the sign down the street.
Was it a nice car?
No, it was a POS, but that's not the point. I got super frustrated because we were in a street sweeping zone. So basically couldn't be there at the time that we were there, missed it by about an hour. And I got really, really upset. I started blaming the government, started blaming the city of San Francisco.
It's always the government's fault. I mean, come on.
Started pointing fingers every different direction, then just had to take a deep breath and say, you know what? This is on me. We were in a rush. We were here for all good reasons. That doesn't excuse anything. And really had to take a second to reflect on why I was immediately pointing fingers and just say, hey, this one's on me. It's going to cost a few $100s. We had to find, I think this was before Uber, had to find a way to get across town to the lot and find the car. But end of the day, we're able to find it, get it out of there, pay it. But really was a smack in the face for me personally, to be accountable for the action.
Well, and that, I mean, to that, a couple of points, right? Pointing the finger, you better point the finger back at yourself. At the same time, look in the mirror, right? You didn't read right. It is what it is. You got to pay the consequences. And by the way, they towed those cars in that shithole part of San Francisco underneath the freeway. Super sketchy. As that happened to me.
That's exactly where it was. Have you been there before?
Yeah, surprise. Same thing. My cousin and her then boyfriend, now husband, were visiting, and I don't know. I dropped him off in the city, and then I went and had work or something. Then I came back up, so I called him, and I'm trying to think. This might have been pre-iPhone. No, we must have had iPhones, but I don't know if I had an iPhone. Anyway,
2009.
It was
early?
Definitely before Uber. Yeah. Same thing. I called him, said I'm coming back to pick you up. I'll meet you at this Starbucks or whatever. I went and grabbed coffee, and by the time I come back, my car had been thrown on a flatbed truck, and I was actually there. I ran up to the guy and I'm like, "Look, let me pay you cash." He's like, "Dude, I already called it in. It's going to that piece of shit underneath the freeway." So it was great. It was like a dumbass though. I went straight away to get my car because we needed it, obviously, to get back to the bay. Back down here. I'm like, I should just carried on. Should have left it there for the whole day and just use it as parking. Because
probably cheaper than parking in San Francisco.
Make like $500 or something stupid. But anyway, no, you're right. You didn't read the sign right. You didn't do this. Mistakes happen. Shit happens. We have to move on from it, as we know. But you're totally right. I think. So let's dig into it. Let's dig into it on the sports side. Accountability in sports is something that I deal with all the time, right? And I think that people who listen to this, and you've heard me say it all the time, I say to the kids that I coach, I can't do it for you, right? I'm just the coach. I'm the one that's playing chess. I'm moving things around to help, but I'm not the one who can be out in the field doing the running for you. I'm not the one that can take the shots for you or whatever. So I always lean it back on the kids very early on in their playing career on accountability. Like if that player burnt past you and you couldn't be bothered to run back, I can't do it for you. Don't look at me as the coach to fix those problems because I can't do that part for you. So I try and teach the kids very, very early on about accountability. I don't say that like in that term, but and I also put it out there as it is a team sport, right? Somebody goes in goal that maybe doesn't want to go in goal. And you've heard me say this before as well. The first defender is your forward, right? They're the ones trying to break down the play from the back line, moving forwards, etc. So the accountability is the team. If they score, it's not the goalkeeper, it's the team. They shouldn't. How did they get there in the first place, right? So I think from a sports standpoint, actual game relationship, that's super important. Then accountability when you're not training, you're not in the game, you're at home, those kind of things also bleed into this kind of topic we're speaking about today. Did you go in the backyard and juggle? Did you play today? Did you, all those things? Again, why didn't you make the team one, for example? Well, did you achieve everything that the coaches laid out for you? And I always try and teach the girls as well, my girls, my kids, not my team. What are you doing extra, right? Did you reach out to a choreographer and ask them for advice? Did you go and do a private say, or did you ask us as parents to do a private lesson to learn how to do that? Did you, right? So Q&A. So, and you've heard me say this, and this is maybe another talking topic. Hopefully everyone listening that has been speaking to you and I, maybe take this small part of advice that I try and give my girls every morning is consequences and actions, right? There's an action can lead to a consequence and a consequence can lead to an action. So are you doing everything in the way that's going to be successful to lead to success is what I'm trying to educate the girls on, right? So if you can't blame the teacher that you didn't have enough time to do your homework because there's a consequence, right? The action was sit down and do your homework. The consequence of not doing it now is you leave it, it gets later and later, you forget what the teacher told you or whatever it is, and then there's a consequence. The consequence is you didn't do your homework on time, you missed something, now you may miss an end of school trip or whatever that is, but that could have all been resolved, X amount of weeks ago if you'd taken the action at the time when it was appropriate.
Yeah, it's really hard to digest that and think into the future, put yourself into your future because you have an emotion that you're feeling right now. I'm tired. Something else happened during the day that made me upset. I'm really not able to, understand exactly what the consequence is going to be down the road. But then you really sit down and think about it. We have a very quick trigger to want to blame somebody else and want to get in and say, well, it was the traffic, it was the sign, it was the government, it was that other player, it was this X, Y, and Z. And I think it really gets down to you're afraid to fail, but it comes off as afraid to take responsibility. You immediately want to find an excuse or deflect and not put it on yourself, to not take that accountability. And it's really lacking in today's sports or even today's society. Let's go back to the days of my bad. Growing up, 90s to early 2000s, the phrase, my bad, that's on me, my bad. We said it all the time. And whether we really meant it or not, maybe we can argue the merits there. But there was an immediate reaction, say, oh, that's on me. I'm going to do better next time. And I don't see as much of that anymore. There's a really quick finger point that's happening. And to your point, not reflecting inwards, that's causing I think a lack of trust. A lack of trust with teammates, a lack of trust in friendships, a lack of trust at work that is really unfortunate if we could just get back to taking that accountability, taking that responsibility to have a little bit more of a working relationship.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, that leads into like being a professional, right? I see it all the time is accountability leads to being a professional. I can trust that you're going to do this or do that, and I don't need to double check you. That's huge. I think we've lost some of that. I truly do. And I was actually just listening to another podcast about that and flip it on its head, right? If those traffic lights didn't turn red when they did, there could have been an accident in front of me. Or, and I was trying to flip it on the positive as I've kind of developed those gray hairs in my beard. Like your car getting towed. Did that happen for a reason, right? If it didn't get towed and you jumped in the car, you could have been in a car accident. Who knows, right? So I always try and flip it in that mannerism and take it from a learning. Happened to me, kind of side topic, when my phone got stolen in Europe a couple of summers ago. Right? I'm the dumbass that left it on the table and the guy just came down and swooped it up So it's on me, right? I trusted people weren't pieces of shit, and I was wrong. So, lesson learned, but it's not going to ruin my vacation. It's not going to, screw any. I mean, kind of was a struggle bubble because then, all your hotel reservations, everything's on an app, but there's ways around it, obviously. But yeah, I mean, that was on me, right? So again, you trust people are going to do the right thing. And there's definitely a trust element around that accountability and again, going back to sports, right? You must trust your teammate that they're going to do the right thing. Right. And I explain that to the 7 and 8-year-olds all the time. There's two of you going for the same ball. Trust your teammate. And the girls, anyone and parents that are listening to this, they'll hear me shout it all the time. Trust your left foot. Most players are right footed, right? And their body position set up for the left. And they'll hear me shout all the time. Trust your left. Like, put that trust in yourself. You're going to be fine. You're going to accomplish something. Like, keep moving forwards. Don't hesitate. The minute you hesitate, you get yourself in trouble. Trust that it's going to work out. And if it doesn't, we'll fix it. And I think that goes for work-life balance as well. There's no work-life balance, but for work as well. Trust that what you're pushing forwards is going to be successful, and be open to, if it's not, how do we fix it and drive forwards from there?
I think that's one of the main points. If you go into a situation with a rigid belief of how it's going to happen, and you have a story in your head of how it's going to play out, you're setting yourself up for failure if it's rigid. Now, there's a separate line of thought on preparedness, game planning, to go on and say, hey, I have a plan for how I want to approach these situations. But it becomes more of a framework than a crystal ball. That way, when it doesn't work out exactly as planned, you have the framework to then rely on, oh, I am prepared, therefore I can adjust to this situation. Or I've thought through some different game plans. All right, this situation came up, I'm going to adapt to it. That would prevent the finger pointing because you're not a failure in that moment. I don't need to deflect away from me and onto something else. I can say, it's okay that it didn't go okay. Maybe I could have done something better, but maybe I prepared as best as I could, and the situation just presented itself a little bit differently, and you become a little more flexible in that. But that means you need to create a foundation ahead of the time, and that fits with the theme of what we talked about over the last couple of weeks of really approaching it with a wider mindset, an openness to feedback and openness to instruction, so that when things do come up that are unexpected, you go in and adapt.
Yeah. And I think that also leads to, that kind of personal growth and stronger relationships, more success, those kind of things. Because again, you're setting yourself up for success, but being able to take criticism, accountability, and growth standpoints from there, right? And I think you and I talk about this a lot with parenting. Our role is to make sure that if the kids, get whatever scenario and situation they get themselves into, their accountability for themselves, and they can figure it out without us needing to hold their hands. Now, not everything's going to flow downhill that way, but I think that's a huge part of it.
And that's all we can really ask for. We talk about what this struggle bubble is, for us to get out of it professionally and with our family and with the different members of the community, but specifically with our own children in our household, and anybody that we're coaching and interacting with is providing that additional framework. It is not about kicking a ball into a net or hitting a home run or scoring a touchdown. It's about building a community, an ability to be dependent upon and be dependent of others, and then being active and positive in that community. I'm saying none of us are going to become professional athletes. I'm under 6 foot tall.
You see me at darts?
I saw you at Arrows, but it's not that reality. So when you're in the moment, you're 12, 13, 14 years old, you're really in that of, oh, damn, I really need to score 3 goals in the game. I really need to be able to hit this home run to show who I am, and I'm going to make it onto my high school team, my college team. It's great to have those goals and those aspirations, but for us as coaches and community members, it is not about that interaction. It's not about that individual game. It's continuing to set the foundation so that kids can rely on it as an outlet and rely on their teammates and their coaches to really help them get to that next phase of life.
Yeah, no, totally. All right, so let me throw this at you. I don't know scenario, but something happens and the kid needs to take accountability for it, and they're not. They're like, it's your fault. You did this, you did that, whatever. How do you deal with that as a parent or as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, both are a little bit one and the same. I think inside the parenting aspect, you have all sorts of other frustrations that are going on of, fear of failing as a parent. Like, what did I do? I went through this all weekend. You want to talk about, going through a Father's Day existential crisis, but, what could I have done more to provide that framework or groundwork? I think diffusing the situation is the immediate first step. We as coaches or as parents are not directing blame. We're not directing an emotion to say you are failing or you are doing this the wrong way, but backing up a moment to say, all right, what happened? What is your view of what went on today or in this event? And back it into the level of preparedness, right? If you are at home and you broke a vase, were you playing ball in the house? Well, we have rules. This is why we have rules. You kind of reinforce the actions have consequences that you alluded to earlier. And you back into this is how we're going to approach it. But I think without blame and without attitude is the best thing that we can do so that there's a comfort in failure. Because the next time that it happens, if they're too afraid to say, oh, this was my fault, therefore I'm going to get in trouble, then you're going to be right back playing the blame game and not being able to take accountability. So I think accountability with consequences, but in that trust tree of being able to understand what went on, the emotions that took play, and why you got to that situation.
Yeah, I like that. We had a saying back in England to any of the boys that are listening: poor preparation equals piss poor performance, right? So if you didn't train, what did you expect, right? You're gonna be bad. Simple as that. Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's an emotional standpoint as well. I think age of the player or age of the kid, understanding cohesively what the hell's going on. I think that's because some of them can't work out whys, which is something I always try and, as you know, when the way that I coach is Q&A. I'm going to ask them why did we look at this? Why are we doing that? What are we seeing? What are we doing? And you hear me all the time, even parenting. Someone loses it and goes mental about something, and it just try and roll it back a little bit, right? Just like, did we prepare the kids right for that as parents, or did we do it all for them? And now when there is a failure, they get pissed, but they didn't have any hand in finding success in that at the same time. So I always try and lean on that personally pretty hard on, again, I'll do your laundry, you put it away. I don't care where it goes away, but don't shout at me if you can't find your stuff the next morning. Like, you have the responsibility of putting all of that away in the place that you think is right. If you want to wear Uggs in August in 98 degrees, take the consequence of having blisters, sweaty feet, and stinking. Your choice, right? There's your accountability. You stink. So there's little ones knocking around every avenue if we go looking for it to point out to the kiddos to work out what that really means.
Yeah, and just those little building blocks are huge. That was one of the biggest revelations that we had with our oldest as we started to prescribe the actions that needed to take place and really say, all right, go put your shoes on, go get dressed, go pick this out, go. It removed her accountability altogether. So then she started pushing back to find her autonomy of who she really was. And once we started giving information, right, we're going to leave for school at 7:45. That's a piece of information that is not prescriptive. It's just a general framework of when we're going to go. Yeah. You have a game this weekend. You have tryouts in a month, and allow them to internalize what it's going to take to then do the action that's going to lead to more accountability, because you're not prescribing. If you prescribe and that fails, that's on you. They're pointing that right back to you. You told me to go do it this way. You told me that I had to prepare this way. And this is all going to depend on the age of the kids, the age of the athletes, and where they're at on their training. But I think getting into and just providing enough information that you have a framework and not a blueprint that allows them to have that accountability and ownership of how they want to handle that situation.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
I'll even go, I want to go a step further on this. So we've talked a lot about the kids, but in running the organizations that we do on the soccer side, the baseball side, the football side, we have different levels of volunteering and needs for people to go in and say, I'm going to help you here or help you there. Or they're going to point a finger at you as the coach to say, no, you are going to do this a certain way. But there's an accountability factor on you as a volunteer coming into the league, whether that is paid or full volunteer or otherwise, to say, I'm in this situation, I'm going to make it as positive as possible. So, what does that mean from me? What do I need to be accountable for in this situation? If I'm volunteering for a snack shack or a team coordinator or any other, on the field, what does that mean for me to own that moment? Oh, there aren't hot dogs in the snack shack. Somebody else should have done that. I'm just here to work. I didn't know that we had to sweep the floor afterwards. I didn't know we needed to lock the door. There's a level of accountability and being in the moment that we as adults and as volunteers really need to have to take pride in the reasons that we're there and make any organization that we're part of or any moment we're in front of these kids a little bit more positive.
I couldn't agree more. There's so many different avenues I can go down on that one. It's the kids need to fail to find success, right? And to your point, when people volunteer for positions and roles and responsibilities, if they don't have time, that's one thing. And if they're transparent about needing some help, that's another thing that people can help with. But doing the job that you signed up for to the best of your capabilities goes back to that accountability and professionalism, right? Just step up. And again, my biggest thing is transparency, communication, transparency. If shit's going to hit the fan, let's get ahead of that as fast as we can, and get the team around it that we know that can help us succeed in that. I think it's such a major part of that, right? In work, in soccer, in baseball, in football, whatever we're doing, I just think it's a major thing. And I look at it in a different light as well. I look at accountability the same time from years and years of just playing and coaching and stuff. I always look at the players that come out that respect their equipment as well. I think that's a big thing for me. Do they come out with clean soccer boots, dirty soccer boots? Do they come out with a soccer ball, without a soccer ball? Because as you know, again, with my teams, I request everybody to have a soccer ball because I think if they bring a soccer ball to training, they have to look after it. So there's a life lesson there. And also, if they've got one, they're going to then play at home as well. So they do more without me being there, which, as we've said before, 4.5 hours with me a week isn't enough for you to go and play at college, right? You've got to be doing more out of sessions with myself. So I look at that. Then I look at the players that pick up the cones at the end of training, the players that pick up pinners at the end of training. So any of my parents on the girls' teams, start listening. I look at the players that line their bags up at the side. I look at the players that have their water bottles ready. I look at the players that are there 5 minutes early juggling. And that can't be for everyone, right? Because most of these kids, none of these kids actually can drive still. So, that's part of that. I look, if you're running late, are you running to the field to get there as fast as you can, or are you just cruising and walking up? On game days, it drives me batshit bonkers. People walking up drinking Starbucks before the game or drinking some crappy fluids before the game. There's a ton of things that I mentally checklist before the kids even get on the field, get training with me or after training, right? Again, just very, very basic. Which kids go and pick the cones up, pick the pinners up? Which of them, when I say bring them back, do they put them in front of me? Do they throw them at me? Do they put them in the bag? What do they do? And I just look at that from a very, not strategic, but I look at it like, who can I trust on the field? Because eventually they're gonna leave me, and I'm gonna prepare them for the next coach. But who am I going to put forwards to go and play at that next level? Or who am I going to put my time and energy into that asks me, hey, can I go play up? Can I go play this team? What do you think about this coach? Whatever. I look at that very, very deeply. I don't know if you do the same at baseball, but it's definitely key for me when I'm picking players and who I want on my team.
Yeah, well, it comes down to a bit of respect on the same side. So we talked a lot about accountability, but it's a respect level, respect for yourself, respect for your coach, respect for your parents. And it's a two-way street. I think we go back to the framework that we're trying to set up for our kids, for our teams, and the expectation back. And when there is a disconnect on the respect level, that's where you see the frustration come out. And that could be an explicit disrespect where they're just telling you, I'm not going to go do that. Don't ask me. I'm not going to pick up a penny. I'm not going to pick up the cones. I'm not going to pick up my clothes at home. But there's usually then an underlying why there. And for parents as coaches, an opportunity to step back and really reflect. But across the board, going above and beyond, being able to say, I respect this game, I respect this family, I respect this coach. You go in and then go that extra mile. You're accountable to yourself, you're accountable to your team, you become dependable, you become trustworthy, and then it fuels everybody else. I've just taken on another role coaching high school football here locally, and it was just an incredible experience to see the level of pride that all of these boys had in being on the team, and the expectation that they didn't want to be and don't want to be the weakest links, which then fosters I am going to pick up the weight room. I am going to pick up these balls. I am going to carry the equipment bag. I want to be looked upon as a leader on the team. And it's everybody
massive.
feels that emotion. It's massive. It's a huge flow and a turn of momentum when you're able to break that through. Now, on the same token, going in the reverse direction, that team culture, family culture is super easy to break because you're just one person away or two people away from breaking that to say, oh, I really want to do that. Oh, Timmy's not doing it. I'm not doing it. Johnny's not doing it. Great. I'm not doing it. And then soon you've got a coach looking left and right saying, what the heck just happened? Yeah. We used to have this big bond, and I just go all the way back to it. It is a framework of expectations and accountability. You set that early, you reinforce it often, and that means reinforcing it as a coach. You model the behavior that you expect, and then the kids are going to gravitate towards that.
Yep. Again, poor preparation equals piss poor performance. Starts from the top down and also bottom up. Right. No, I like that. I like that, Chad. I think we can finish on that one. We nearly ramped up 30 minutes on accountability, professionalism, respect, responsibilities. The kind of list goes on, but I think it's a cortex to grow in as a human, honestly. Look in the mirror. Take that accountability. How do I help? What can I help with? And again, any of my players listening or parents, please refer back to pick up all my crap at the end of the sessions.
And just overall, remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about the progress. It's about the journey. It's about being able to be flexible and reflect on who you are and where you want to ultimately get to. And remember, we're all in this world together. So the more that we have that trust and accountability together, the easier it's going to be for all of us to achieve all of our goals.
Totally.
Totally. We are going to wrap up this episode. And remember, we are on Instagram. We'd love everyone to follow and provide some comments on the episodes and the little clips that we're posting. That's the Struggle Bubble Pod on Instagram. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. We enjoy the conversations we're having through all of those social channels. So please keep the commentary coming. Until next time, I'm Chad. That's Craig. Thank you for listening to the Struggle Bubble.